Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Midwest Mythos. And guys, we are back. The first actual interview since coming back after these 5 months. I hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode with Kevin, Teddy, and Code, just breaking the rust off, letting me test out my new equipment and stuff, and just sitting around having a good time. But tonight, been sitting on this one for a minute. Mr. Don here actually sent me an email the day I decided I'm taking a break. So he patiently dealt with me while I said, hey, I'm taking a few months off, but you're going to be my first interview back. And I thank him so much. We've been talking for about 45 minutes before even hitting record. And guys, I can already tell this is going to be great. So without further ado, Mr. Don, how you doing this evening?
Real good, Riley. I'm here to hopefully share some interesting content with your viewers and see where this goes. Unscripted, it may go on a tangent, but I guess I ask everybody to bear with us. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you for being here. If it's anything like what the last 45 minutes have been, this is going to be awesome. So I guess let's just get straight into it if you want. Start wherever you want with whatever you want. And I'll sit back and listen for a minute.
Yeah, I've been sort of on the trail of researching Bigfoot, finding out everything I can about it. It all started in '78. My first encounter in Illinois here. I was out mushroom hunting, had my dog with me, and encountered what appeared to be was going through this area along this one channel, this creek channel. I encountered this, for lack of a better word, uh, Sasquatch. At the time, I didn't know what to make of it, hiding under this huge tree that basically had a giant canopy, and it was hiding in the branches under the next to the tree. And I just my first impression, and my dog came onto it first. He was about 20 feet ahead of me. Did an about face and headed right back toward me and tried to get between my legs. And I thought, what did he see? Uh, but he alerted on it, and I went up to where he had turned around, and there's this big thing. I'd say between the 7 and 8 foot range. And I'm thinking, what is it standing on? And it was standing behind these branches. And I assumed at first, I thought homeless person. It's a big homeless person. And it was during morel season, which is, I'm sure they have it in Indiana, but it's usually here in the months of, starts at the end of April through May into the first week or two of June. And I'm thinking, what's this thing wearing? It's dressed pretty warm, must be sweating its butt off. I was in, I think, a long sleeve shirt, and that's it. And I was thinking, of course, I wasn't half naked. I did have pants and shoes on. Let your viewers know that. But I was like, I didn't know what to make of it. But I got a sense of like, I don't. I guess I could say it was like paranoia or fear to like, I need to whatever that thing is. In my mind, I was trying to justify what I was looking at. So I turned around and I backed out of there. I left out of there, and I was like, it kept coming back in my memory for several weeks after that. What was I witnessing? And then eventually I, uh, I went to New Mexico, uh, moved down there, was driving a beer truck for Coors. I think the first 6 or 7 months I worked there, I worked as a plumber. And then I got a job driving a truck, delivering beer to all the various packaged liquor stores and taverns and such. And I took a weekend off, and I decided to go uh, camping in the Gila National Wilderness, not far from where I lived in central Mexico. The town at that time was called Central. And I drove past a small town called Mimbres, New Mexico. Ended up in an an area of the mountains on the western side of the Black Range, which is a Gila wilderness area, and ended up going down a mountain with a backpack. And at that time, I had got another dog. My first dog got hit by a pickup, got over my enclosed fence, and he unfortunately was hit by a truck. But ended up going to the pound, and I got a Samoy and took him camping with me that weekend. And what transpired was the first night I spent. I got to a valley area along a creek, 30 feet from a creek, and I ended up. I got a little lost or turned around and was able to find my way back to where my campsite was near this creek bed in the valley between these mountains. And I built a fire, cooked some grub for myself, basically hot dogs, and I think I had some other food with me. And I ended up because there was black bears in that area. The guy I worked for on weekends told me, "Yeah, you want to make sure your food and your grub or your backpack is away from you, not near where you're bedding down or your campsite." And so he told me to hang it in a tree. So I had some rope in my backpack. Basically, hung my backpack up in a tree, probably 18 feet or so off, 15 to 18 feet off the ground. And in just probably a few hours after that, it was approaching sunset, and I heard something coming down the mountainside, pretty much the same way I hiked down, and there was a lot of loose hard scrabble and like riprap on that bottom part of the slope of the mountain, and I hear this thing walking through it. And so it's already dark at this time. I'd say it's probably about 15 minutes, maybe 10 minutes before total darkness. So, it's at that point where you no longer see the glow of sunset behind the horizon. And I hear this thing walking down toward me, walk its way across the creek bed. I was camped 30 feet on the other side of this creek bed. I hear it splashing through the creek bed. And now it's about, I'd say 10. Yeah, 10, maybe a little after 10 p.m. in the night. And when it makes its way to the creek bed, now it's like pitch dark. I can't see anything. And from that moment on until 4:30 a.m. the next morning, I came to the conclusion I was surrounded by at least 2 to 3 of these individuals walking 360-degree circle around me, constantly moving around me. Initially, I thought it was one individual moving quick, really quick. And my dog would position himself. He knew he could see better than a human being can in the dark. Dogs have fairly good vision, night vision.
Mhm.
But my dog was like it was like an arrow on a compass. Wherever this thing would move, my dog would move and point to that position. And this went on from 9:30, 10 o'clock to 4 a.m. the next morning, right when it was starting to get dusk, right when the light was starting to get bright. Then it came in noisy,
Wow.
left at some point in the a.m. hours, 4:30, whatever, silently like a ninja. I didn't even hear it leave. But I didn't get 1 second of sleep. I ended up the whole night on my knees with my buck knife in my hand, and my dog's collar was in my other hand for most of the night. But at some point, when initially I thought it was a black bear prowling around, I let him go. I let go of the collar because dogs, they'll chase black bears. They'll chase them away. But that wasn't really a smart thing either, because dogs have been known to chase black bears right into you, right over you. So I later on, I was thinking, why did I let go of the collar? But I think I did it out of self-defense. I thought maybe my dog would deter this black bear. But then when I saw it at one point during the night, uh, probably when this first started, probably closer to like 11:30, about an hour and a half after it started, I had my flashlight with me, and it was dimming. I didn't put new batteries in it before I left, and it was dimming. But at one point, I got a silhouette of this creature leaning out from behind a juniper. Because in New Mexico, all we had is scrub oaks and junipers and cactus and agave. You didn't have very much. It's not like Illinois where you got hardwoods and mixed with pine trees. So I saw this thing lean out from the eye in the tree, and it was a big guy. I was thinking, well, who is this guy? And I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking when he came down the mountain at at when it was just starting to get dark, I remember thinking to myself, where's his flashlight? What human being walked down this mountain toward where I was hiking without a flashlight from up at the summit? There were parking lots at the summit of this area going through the Black Hills. And I'm thinking, is that, and I even yelled out when it first approached, who is that? I can hear you. Who is that? No answer. You could just hear the footfalls coming down the mountainside. So that was probably what started this whole journey for me. Yeah, I've been doing, and that was about, yeah, closer to 45, almost, yeah, over 46 years ago. This occurred in 79. So it started this journey I've been on ever since, Riley. So here I am after all that time, still doing it. And I'm not out there as much, and I don't go alone as much as I used to. So I still occasionally go to an area of high activity. I call it my hot spot, where I still have interactions to this day. More recently, 2.5 weeks ago, when I was out there, I had activity. So and I've been trying to sort of do things in cooperation with other people that maybe have uh, more knowledge, have more people, boots on the ground doing this in Washington. Uh, the Olympic Project, David Ellis has reviewed some of my audio footage, my audio content that I've been able to capture from Illinois and Tennessee, and he's been able to uh, scrub through the audio content and find quite a lot of interesting audio. One he told me about, which compares to what they capture in uh, in the Olympic Peninsula and up there in the Northwest. He calls it the sing song. I asked him about that. What do you mean by sing song? He goes, he says it sounds like a young adult, possibly even a female Sasquatch that seems to be content or happy making this sing song uh, sounds or vocalizations. And the reason he told me that is because I gave him an audio from my area along the Illinois River of a very similar, almost identical sing song audio coming from that area where I found prints, I found structure. I've heard them running away from me when I approach. And in the background, he scrubbed through it and filtered out all the high and low background noise and uncovered the same sing song, very similar to what he was getting in Washington in the Olympics. So and I thought, and I'd heard the vocalizations before. I've heard wood knocks, what sounds like whooping, which I later was able to determine it was not. I thought initially it was dog barks. And I remember questioning, what are these dogs doing out in the middle of a forest, in the middle of a state park, with thousands of acres? It came to the realization that when I re- basically looked deeper into it and reviewed the audio, that it was not dog barks, it was whooping among several individuals, and you could hear it before and after the sing song, the whooping going on. So they were all doing it, and I guess together, sort of like their answers, or it was all culminating in this sing song, and you could hear the whoops preceding it, and then sort of trailing after it. So it was, and this is still going on to this day. And so people who think their little microforest near their little community has no Bigfoot activity, I'm here to suggest they may be totally wrong. And because I see, uh, I can't say anything about the numbers of Bigfoot, but I think the population, based on reports and eyewitness sightings, uh, are a lot. The population is a lot higher than people think.
I would agree with that. It,
Yeah,
ex- especially like what you said, like your little micro forest and stuff like that. I, I spent the first 23 years of my life up in Michigan. I've lived from Benton Harbor all the way up to Sault Ste. Marie up in the UP. I've been up and down, and I've heard stories of encounters in the big ones in the lower peninsula of Michigan are like the Manistee National Forest and stuff like that, and up in the UP and the Hiawatha. But down, a majority of the stories I hear are these little 50-acre micro woods. And I've had an encounter in Michigan in one of these. A bunch of my buddies that hunt have had these encounters, like just stuff peeking out. And it's if they're in these little 50, like you said, little little 50-100-acre little patches of wood, that to me would prove that the population's a lot higher than we think. Because like you were saying, a lot of people believe it's just these big national forest, state parks, and stuff like that that they believe these things
Yeah,
are.
I don't think
But
they. I mean, maybe you've heard this too. I've sort of batted it around, and I've heard both sides of the story. A lot of Bigfoot researchers, me included, our biggest times, at least in the Midwest and probably other parts of the United States, the best time to get into remote forested areas, even areas that are somewhat, uh, I guess you'd say, you have to do bushwhacking in, even in parts of microforests. You might have 50 or 100 or 200 acres. You still have to bushwhack off the trails. In the woods in these areas get really thick, and a lot of those areas, they don't allow hunting. They're like preserves or conservation areas. So you don't see, other than maybe people that are doing poaching, they don't see a lot of human activity in that area. And I've come to the conclusion that as a human being, whether you just love doing hiking, camping, most of our hiking and camping, even here in the Midwest, is done during the spring and early summer to early fall to late fall. Now, winter, in the middle of the summer where it's hotter than hell, in winter, nobody goes out in the forest. Y- I did early on because I was young and I could sort of take advantage of my youth and my ability to sort of resist the heat and deal with the cold. I would go out in the snow in the middle of winter, February and January even. I came to the conclusion that everybody's assessment that the most active areas, you even find this down south, they'll claim the most active times for to get Bigfoot to catch activity audio or find prints is during the spring and the fall. And then I realized, well, in actuality, that's the time even the average researcher will go out and do research because it's a lot easier on your body. You want 60 to 70-degree weather. You don't have to put a lot in your backpack to survive, and you can deal with the heat or even the cold if it drops down to the 60s or high 50s. And I realized, wait a second. So I started going off during the times that they claimed there was allegedly no Bigfoot activity in the middle of the heat of the summer. It gets suppressively hot even here in Illinois, or during the winter when it gets down to below zero. And I come to find out the activity was still there. It's just that nobody reports it because nobody goes out during those times. And there's less eyewitness sightings because it's not
right,
like the average family will tell their wife and kids, "Hey, dress up. We're going out in February to hike down the trail, at 10 degrees above zero." Nobody does that. So I started going out during inclement weather,
right,
uh, especially after storms or at the beginning of storms, where you'll see nobody in these areas, in these forested areas. And I was finding activity. I was hearing sounds. I was hearing growls. Uh, and I got evidence of that. Now I've got it captured. I have proof of that. And they're there. I think they move around, but they don't migrate as people claim. I think they're nomadic to a degree, but they may stay in like, if I, on a map, I could draw like a chart of like, 100 square miles. They might be for 2 or 3 weeks in one area in the middle of the winter. And when their resources wear out, they'll move to another section right near there because now that's where the deer, that's where the food is. And they do that. And then as things start to get warmer, their calories go toward, because I believe that I've come to the conclusion are omnivores, just like bear. When things start to, green up and farmers start planting their first crops and certain fruits come up in the forest, uh, and even the same in the fall, the oak trees and everything start dropping acorns. They take advantage of that. So I don't think when people say they migrate, they're not like, herds of elk where they're
Right.
migrating, hundreds of miles to another area. And I think they're staying around, but I consider they're more nomadic and they move around. Now I think in other areas, when you get out west to Oklahoma and stuff, I think they have to move a lot further, greater distances
Yes.
because they don't have thick forests. They have basically creeks and river bottoms, which are their watersheds at where all the forage concentrates. So they have to move great distances in places like Oklahoma, which is like, in some regards, almost like a semi-desert in certain parts of
Ye-
Oklahoma. And I've been to like Lake Eufaula in Oklahoma. I did research there too. And when you get to Lake Eufaula, I guess a national park or national forest. It's thickly forested in parts, but then you get in other areas where it's dry as hell. So I think
mhm.
it's based on where that group or family or clan live. If they live in Oklahoma, they may basically wander further. They may be more nomadic. In Illinois, I think they can stick to locally where we have waterways and lakes and rivers everywhere and creeks. So they move along the watersheds too below the ridge line in the bottoms where you can never see them, which reminds me of how Navy SEALs move. Uh, if they're in mountainous areas, they stay below the peaks. They stay in what they call the military ridge, which is like the secondary ridge below the peaks. So you never see them skylighted. Yet, and also I believe people always say, "Well, they're nocturnal." No, they're both diurnal and nocturnal. I think they're just as active in the daytime, unless they're more concerned about uh, being seen or people figuring out where their position is. They'll definitely stay hidden during the daytime, but still move around if there's no people around. And I've had, only because I was doing what I call cold camping at night with another couple friends of mine. During the cold camps, you're out there, you get there a couple hours before nightfall, find your location set up, and you just sit there and wait, and they show up. It's not the same as going into your average campground in a state or national park and setting up your RV or your tent and getting a campfire going and getting the cooking and turning your radio on and just ignoring, just being happy you're there and ignoring what's around you. Sure, they'll come down in those situations, and because they're masked by your activity and your noise, you'll never hear them approach. And that's one of the methods I used one year with my son. I went down to Southern Illinois to Shelbyville Lake, and they had, I think, one, two, three, four state parks surrounding Shelbyville in Southern Illinois. And same thing. We had a campfire going. We're cooking steaks. Uh, my son, I think he had he had something with him to play music. He had one of those old, like the iPads, I think it was, or iPods. He was playing music on his iPod. And I was doing research, and they came in on us that time. We're throwing pebbles at our tent. We could hear them walking around the tent exterior on the outside of our campfire beyond the campfire light. Uh, we and found structure that night. We decided to walk toward where we were hearing the footsteps, and we found this huge giant arch, a tree that was I'd say 60, 70 feet tall, was bent over like a perfect, beautiful arch. It reminded me of the St. Louis Arch on a smaller scale. Pinned to the ground, had some deadfall, dragged over, pinned the top of the tree down, and I walked past that arch, and I found a place where the runoff creek between these two hills, they had taken branches and broke them all off and stacked them like a bridge across this crevice where these two hills met, or this creek is. And then they introduced, I don't know how many, like I looked like 4 or 5 wheelbarrows worth of leaves, and introduced it to the bottom. And I crawled in there and I told my son, I said, this is comfortable. And then I crawled back out and we looked at all the sticks they stacked like a bridge. And they were all branches averaging 10 to 12 feet in length, all broken off on either end. They were all debarked and they were stacked perfectly. And I wouldn't have found it, but I followed the direction this arch was pointing, and I walked right past it, and it led me directly to it, almost like a signpost. And so that was over 10 years ago or 12 years ago. And he thought it was unusual. You know, he was with me and I go, what's going on here? This is before I realized that structure is sort of a critical part of determining where Bigfoot have been, their activity, and the structures also have a significance benefit because they also show directions to like where the waterways are, possibly where forage is, possibly where they themselves are living for other Bigfoot in the clan or family to find the ones that are already there. So I'm not solely, I don't solely put my all my pennies in one jar and just concentrate on structure as some people do, but I know it's an important element and it's allowed me to find footprints. And initially, I found them when I went out with a friend of mine, and he goes, we're going to an area, and he knows I had recorded vocalizations. He knew I showed him a lot of pictures of my structures, and he says, well, I'll take you to a place where you can see them. And I go, thinking I heard him wrong, I go, you mean see the structure or evidence of them being there? And he goes, no, we're going to see them. So I can't guarantee it, but I have a high percentage that you'll witness something the first night we're out. And, he wasn't saying 100%, but he said there was a high likelihood of it. And I went out with him and we cold camped that night, just me and him. We don't use flashlights. We don't build a campfire. It's like, I call it it's sort of like minimal camping or minimal camping where you don't have a bedroll, you don't have a tent, you just have minimal supplies in your backpack, and to keep you there for the night, to be comfortable. And then in the morning, if you want to get up and make some coffee or whatever before you head back to your car. But we did that the first time he took me there, and I brought my night vision, and I believe I also brought a thermal camera with me. And it was on that thermal camera that, and I also picked an interesting location, which he was fine with. I said, see this arch over here? And it was like 45, 50 feet off the tracks. As you'd walk into this area, it's private land, it's deeply wooded, and it's like the hills in Missouri. There's one hill after the other. We find this one structure, it's an arch. And on both sides of the arch, they had sticks leaned up on either side of this curved arch. And there were what looked like lifts on the ground. Like, they were taking short sticks and making the equivalent of what we call letters or Chinese characters on the ground. I didn't know what to make of them. And so I told them, when we come back to camp here at night, I think it was 3 days later, we came back. I said, we'll camp on the east side of the structure, and putting us still 50 feet off the tracks. And we had a big dead log laying on the ground, probably 3.5, 4 feet in diameter. I said, we'll use this as a backrest. We'll just sit here. And he looked at me sort of funny. He goes, you think it'll be all right? Because he had seen him there already, probably 8 or 9 times. He had actually seen Bigfoot during the daytime, and also pretty close to dusk. And he said, you want to set up our night camp, cold camp here, against, where this tree is, not far from the structure. And I told him, I said, yeah, I think this will be perfect. Because I knew the structure was there for a reason, and their movements are associated with these structures. So we went back a few days later. We set up our cold camp. I had my thermal with me, a FLIR thermal, and I was around probably close to midnight. I'd say 11:30, maybe 11:45. I'm scanning from left to right with my night vision, my thermal, and what I found out later the next morning, we figured out this tree was about 95 feet on our 12 o'clock. I see this creature. I mean, I had the palette set on like it was like phosphorus orange or something. It was really a bright color. So everything in the everything, all the trees and everything are uh, either a grayscale or darker color. I see this orangish thing. The outline was pretty obvious. Head and shoulders, uh, right shoulder, arm, and most of the chest, and all the way down to its upper thigh, its upper right thigh. Lean out, grabbing the tree like this, and it leaned out this way and leaned out and looked straight at me from my 12 o'clock. I'm watching it on thermal. It looks right directly at me, and I'm looking. I'm not believing this. And from where I was, I'm thinking it had to be fairly tall. I'm thinking it's got to be at least 6 to 7 feet from where I was sitting. And so I hand it to my friend, Dave, and it says, look straight where I was looking. And he looks and he goes, holy cow, and he's telling me while he's watching it, the thing steps out to its left away from the tree and turns with his back toward me and Dave. And Dave goes, you won't believe what I'm seeing now. I was like almost trying to snatch the camera away from him. What do you see? What do you see? And he describes it. He says, it turned around. He says it walked away from us with its back facing us. And he says, and the weed line dropped to below its buttocks. That's when he saw the buttocks. And he goes, you won't believe what I'm seeing. He says, it's got a big bottom, and then he named this. I'm not going to name her, but she's she's a big woman then, but she was a she was a talk show host back in that time, and she was a black lady, and he goes, he has a or it has a butt like, then he names a person, and I go, what the hell? And he goes, yeah. He says it was walking away, and it was like almost I don't know, it was like a punchline of a joke when we told him. I go, are you serious? And by the time he handed it back to me, it was gone, but I could still see its hand impression, the the heat impression of the thermal. I could still see its hand on the front of the tree. Where it grabbed the tree would have been with its left hand and curved the tree around to the front to lean out to the right. And I could still see that big 5-fingered impression on the tree. And I go, look I could still see the hand impression, and I handed the camera back to him. So that was a beginning in the night, and it only got better because within 45 minutes to an hour after that, we're sitting there. I'm scanning like a crazy man back and forth, and we hear what I would call a power wood knock. It was like super loud. It was like kapow, and I was like, and he said, and I have it recorded. I still have that recording, but I could hear that on the audio. And he goes, did you get that? And I go, I believe I recorded it on my audio. I had a camcorder going, and it was had an external mic, and it picked it up. So shortly after we heard the power knock in a distance, and I want to say it sounded like it was probably 100 yards or more away, but it sounded like it was probably only couple hundred feet away, but it was loud. We're sitting there and we're talking. And that was the first thing I learned about Bigfoot research, Riley, is be yourself, act normal. Don't pretend like you're sneaking around and trying to be deceptive, like you're going to catch them, because
Right.
they know intelligent enough to see that kind of behavior, and they'll never show up. They'll go conceal, and you'll never see them, or they won't make any audio, do wood knocks, but you won't hear them, the vocalizations. So we're sitting there talking, just BSing, and
Yeah, that's what,
and go ahead.
sorry. Oh, that's what me and the team of guys I go with do is we are, and that's why As of right now, we have 100% success rate since I've been going with them. We've gone to Tennessee, Alabama, and in between, and all that kind of stuff. And every single time we go out somewhere, we're not trying, like you said, we're not trying to be stealthy. We're not trying to be sleuth. We're just existing, talking. Uh, Sometimes, I'll take my guitar out and I'll play, and then all of a sudden we'll hear stuff walking. We'll hear vocalizations. I had a very similar thermal experience as you, as far as like holding on to the tree and peeking out from it, and all this is just us existing. There's one time like we laid and we're just quiet, but we weren't like trying to be stealthy. We just laid down in the middle of this holler, and just we were quiet, but going in, we're laughing, joking, yelling at each other and stuff like that. And we're just like,
They
let's quiet.
sense that you're not deceptive, and if you're honest, and I think part of it too is, and I make a habit of this, is whether I'm doing research or not, I'm just on a hike with, in the woods with my kids or my wife. I'm just or I'm going to hike by myself down a trail in a park. If I see debris, I see refuse, garbage on the ground, I pick it up. And I think that gives them a sense of who you are. Like, you're not you know, some beer drinking fool is running around throwing his cans everywhere and throwing his garbage on the ground. And so I try to, like, I present myself as an honest person, or at least I try to show them that, yeah, I care about nature as much. You guys are living out here. I can imagine they don't like when we chop down their trees or throw refuse and garbage in their area. So I think it's out of respect for nature, and they look to see if you're that kind of individual. If you're not, and you're in there with, chainsaws cutting down trees so you can burn in your campfire and going crazy, yeah, you'll hear tree knocks. You might get visits of the night. They're not going to be, I don't think, super nice to you. I think there's sort of I call it the law of karmas could occur, and you might be the butt of their joke because I don't think they appreciate what you're doing. But again, that's just speculation. I've had good results by being out there and picking up garbage and taking it back with me. But in this particular instance, like I was saying, after we saw that thermal and watched this creature eventually walk away, we I'll tell you what we found later that next morning. We went back to the tree and we did a comparison, and we figured the tree was 95 to 100 feet away. And as Dave he stepped away uh, and kept an eye on me. He stepped in front of the log we had our backrest on a little further closer, and he was watching me, I think with binoculars. No, he was watching me with a naked eye, and he told me about where the tree was, and I got to that tree, and he told me to put my hand up above my head to reach the spot where he thought the top of the head of this creature was. And so we estimated it was between I thought it was like 6 to 7 feet. It turned out to be 7.5 to 8 feet tall. So it was much taller, still pretty good size for Bigfoot. But
Right.
what happened subsequent to that, after we saw him on thermal, we heard the power knock, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes later, and we just started bullshitting. We just started talking uh, about our past and, where he went to high school and all our trials and tribulations going through that time of our life. Uh, and also talked about the thermal hit and the one comparing it to the ones he saw during the daytime in the same area. And we talked for about a good hour nonstop. And the next thing we heard, this loud, it sounded like a female opera singer with started singing out this. I won't even say it was singing it out. It was just, it just vocalized in low octave, but it sounded more female. Reminded me of these female opera singers that are like 300-pound women, and they have this like deep, basso profundo voice. Sings out la 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 real loud, and this went on for the la la la's went on for about, I want to say, 8 to 9 seconds nonstop. And we just
Wow.
we almost like our jaws dropped. And he looks at me and he goes, "Did you get that on audio?" And I had just turned off my audio, assuming nothing else would occur. I was saving battery. valuable lesson. I leave all my audio and cameras on when I exit my vehicle now. And I never wait till I'm in an area and say, okay, I think it's a good time now to turn it on. No, I leave them running all the time. So we discussed that later on. And I says, my impression was, I think they have a sense of family just like we do. There's a very similar thing going on where, you get agitated by your siblings or you get agitated by maybe other people being near you. I'm sure you've been in areas where you're picnicking and you're irritated with the people in the next campsite screaming and throwing their beer cans and just being crazy. And you're like, you idiots. Uh, that was we were talking for an hour. And it was reminding me of when I was with my friends in the kitchen when I was younger, talking with 2 or 3 of my friends in the kitchen, at the kitchen table playing cards or whatever, just going nonstop, chattering. And my sister walks in to the dining room, to the kitchen, and goes, blah, 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 blah. Like she makes fun of me and all my friends. I've been through that. I told Dave, I said, this thing, this Sasquatch or whatever the hell it was making fun of us because we were nonstop talking. He just goes, la, 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 like we can hear you guys. And they were to some degree, I won't say totally comfortable with us, but it came from a hill at our 9 o'clock, which was probably 50 feet away from us, the base of that hill, covered with foliage and weeds. So it was in there concealed going la, 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 like it was right outside the wall of my house where you could it was so loud. And I was like, what the hell? So then I picked up my thermal and I thought, I'm going to look and see if I could see it. So I look over toward the hill with my thermal where I heard this vocalization and I couldn't see anything. And I'm scanning back and forth. Within, I want to say 5 to 10 minutes of doing that, I happen to see the weed cover, the ground cover between us and that hill at it would be about our 9 or 10 o'clock. The weeds were like 18 inches to maybe 2 feet tall. I see this, what I call nowadays the spider crawler is the best way I could explain it. This thing crawling within 30 feet of where we were sitting. And I assume it came from that hill. I can't prove it. Or it came from the tree directly in front of us, 95 feet away. And we don't even know if it's the same creature that was spotted on thermal initially or the creature that was vocalizing la, la, la. But here it is crawling 30 feet in front of us to our left on all fours. And I'm mesmerized. I'm watching it. I caught it when I was scanning. I see the bright orange and I'm looking at it. I see the top of the shoulders, the top haunches of the thigh, and what appeared to be a flat back. Not like a cougar has, not like a wolf has. It had a flat back like a human does. No tail, no head. All we could see is the upper portion, maybe the top of the shoulders, the top part of the back. I'd say you could see the thermal palette color bleeding through the weed. So you could see the top of its back, and then you could see where the haunches connect to the buttocks, and then maybe a little part of the top of the thigh, but no tail, no head. And I'm like, what the hell am I looking at? So I hand the camera to Dave and I go, look at that. Look right where I was pointing. And he looks and he goes, that's not a cougar. A cougar, when you look at a cougar, its head will usually be in line with the top of its spine, and it has a narrow back. Its back is sort of like because of its rib cage, it doesn't have a flat back like a human. And he goes, that's not a cougar. I don't see a tail. I don't see a head. Well, of course, when Bigfoot crawl, they can drop their head. Well, even when you see them standing, their head is sort of below their shoulders and sort of they have a neck, but their neck seems, below their shoulders, and their neck is big, but it's compressed. You can't really see it. That's why many times, even in the Patty footage, if you ever notice on the Patty footage from Bluff Creek, I think it's Bluff Creek, when they looking at it, the
Yeah.
1967 Patterson Gimlin film, when Patty looks to her right, she has to at some point she can turn her head no further, so she has to turn her upper body so she can look to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And then that made me realize, well, wait a second, of course, its head is sort of stuck deep down below its pectoral area and, and its shoulders. And so it makes sense if it's doing it on all fours and it's crawling on all fours, you probably would be lucky to even see the back of the head. So we conceded at that point that must be one of the creatures we just formerly either heard or saw on thermal. So I'm looking at it and I cab the camera and go, look at this. Something's crawling in the weeds 30 feet away. He grabs the thermal and he's looking and he's following it. It crawls between the hill that we heard this la 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 vocalization come out of. It crawls around that hill, and where this hill comes down at an angle, it meets another hill. And in that ravine between the two hills is all this bunch of fall down trees, logs, just a collection of basically brush and trees. At first I thought, well, that's just natural, because we saw it when we walked in there during the day. And I thought, oh, it's very common. You have fall downs and they collect on the ravine between the hills. Well, this thing crawled. He followed it with the thermal. It crawled right up to that buildup of brush and trees in the ravine on that hill. He said it crawled behind it and disappeared. And he's watching this buildup of fall down logs and trees, and I call it, I guess it'd be more of windfall and, deadfall between that built up. He's watching it crawl behind this deadfall, and then he says, "Oh my God!" He says, "It popped its head up behind the deadfall, looking directly back at us." And I go, "What?" And by the time I reach for the camera, he says, "Not pop back down." And I go, "Where was it looking?" So it was looking directly back at me. So it crawled around the deadfall, crawled up the deadfall from behind, or stood up behind it, and then looked directly back at us. So this thing it had us, it knew exactly what we were doing, and we had no lights on. We were sitting there in total darkness. You could see it was partially cloudy that night. So if something got within 40 to 50 feet in front of you, you could see it with your naked eye. But beyond that distance, you couldn't make anything out. As opposed to a total moonlit, starlit night, you wouldn't need a flashlight. You could see pretty good with your own night vision, or the adjustment from your eyes. But I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." So it went behind that deadfall and disappeared. And he goes, "Next thing I know, I see the this thermal image of what appears to be a head pop up over the top of this deadfall, looking directly back at me." So that's what we were dealing with during that night. It was crazy. It was a crazy night. We had a lot of vocalizations, a lot of wood knocks, a lot of footfalls, and we had things thrown at us. Later, after after we went through all the audio and some of the audio and most of the FLIR thermal sightings we had on the camera, it's getting now it's going closer to 1 a.m. and now we are having things thrown at us in right after midnight. And this went on and off until the morning, when we hiked out at about 6:30. As we're leaving, we hear what sound like two individuals arguing, having a back and forth. And Dave goes, "We're walking out toward the tracks," which is our way to exit that area to go back to where we parked, and we'd walk on top of the tracks. And as we're making our way, our 50 or 60-foot walk out to the tracks to then take a left and go back to our cars, before we even reach the tracks, you could hear down toward this creek bed that was just west of us. You could hear from the creek bed a real deep chatter, very similar to the Sierra sounds. We could hear the chatter of what sounded like a male with a deep voice, acting pissed off and just chattering like, "Rah, rah, rah." It was doing like that. And when it slowed down, before it even ended, you could hear what sounded like a female, a higher octave vocalization, talk over him to, like, "Hey, listen to me," blah, 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 like trying to calm him down. Our impression was he didn't like us being there and she was trying to calm him down, or he maybe wanted to pursue us and maybe she was trying to tell him not to. I mean, anything's possible. Or maybe they had a disagreement about, you know, you have more of the deer than I do. I want to save this for I don't know. It was all speculation. But
Right.
later on
Right.
to Davis, what was your impression? He says he seemed pissed off and she seemed like she was trying to calm him down because you could hear her higher octave voice, uh, which was the returning conversation, like we're talking, and when you talk to your wife before you end your sentence, she's already returning her response or answer. So you're sort of talking over each other during and then you're hearing that in live. And it was like, I go, Dave, you want to take a right before we get to the tracks and go toward it? And he sort of looked at me and he goes, he had been surrounded before, just like I had been in New Mexico. And he didn't want to. He was like, I don't think I want to go down there. So, and when I say down there, it's like toward the creek bed, which was probably not even 70, 60 yards from where we were standing. We could hear these returns in conversation. And I go, he didn't seem too happy. I said, maybe he's the one that was crawling around us last night. He was looking at us from the tree. And we came to the conclusion. And during that night, we also had deer pushed into our location. We had 2 deers at different times. One, I think it was a 5 or 6 or 7 point buck circling us. And then later on, a button buck shows up and it's circling us. And they were panting. I could see through my thermal the color of it blowing through its nostrils, just like a horse does. When a horse gets,
Mhm.
worked up or excited, it does a lot of that blowing out of its mouth and nostrils. That's how these deers, they acted excited. And then we came to the conclusion, oh, we interrupted their hunt. And because we placed ourselves near this structure, the structure must have had significance regarding maybe pathways where deer travel, and they were trying to maybe ambush deer, and they just by accident, not to their liking, came across us 2 guys in the middle of it all. Yeah, and we were like, we interrupted the deer hunt. We came to the conclusion, and that why I believe the next morning we heard these exchanges and conversation, like maybe they didn't get their deer, or we interrupted the hunt, but these deer surrounded us like I think the deer knew we were there, and the deer felt that we gave them some sort of modicum of protection by being around us, and it kept circling us. I watched the deer circling me 3 or 4 times, just blowing, out of its nostrils, just breathing heavy. And he looked at the deer through the thermal and he goes, these deer are exhausted. They've been run hard. And I go, yeah, I can't imagine who'd be doing that, sarcastically. And so we concluded we interrupted a hunt. So that was one of my probably experiences that opened up the door for me. And we went back to this area several more times, had more experiences, interactions, saw him again at night. Not just like the crawler. One night I was just talking to you about with Dave, where we saw the crawler crawl out in front of us in the weeds, 30 feet away from where we were sitting. We went back to that same location, probably 60 yards closer to the creek bed, and we had one crawl into camp, which was probably 10 to 12 feet away from us. No thermal, partial moon, starlit night, no clouds. You can see with your naked eye pretty well. And we're sitting there, and this creature crawls around a hedge apple tree and around it, because I saw the base of the tree get really wide, like something was trying to crawl around it. And then it got in front of the tree and crawled toward us. And I see this big black half moon type thing on the ground coming toward us. And I assume it was a Bigfoot. We have no bears in that part of the country. It wasn't a wolf, but we immediately stood up, and I go, "Who is that?" And then of course Dave goes, "We can see you." And the thing stopped, and it was about 10 to 12 feet from us, and it did what I call a backwards crab crawl. It didn't like turn around. It like went backwards and crawled backwards, and you could see its silhouette get smaller. And I'm like, that was freaky. And at the beginning of that night, that was a different night. There was me, Dave, and Mitch. There was three of us, and it was about not even 10 minutes before total darkness at dusk, and we heard like I want to say 8 to 10 individuals whooping all at once. It was a simultaneous whooping of several individuals. You know what it reminded me of? And it was on the base of a hill, pretty good distance from us. Uh, on the other side of the tracks, there's a road, and then on the other side of the road, there's this huge hill, totally forested with mostly hardwoods. And from that area, we heard, I want to say that was 100 plus, maybe 115, 20 yards away. From that distance, we heard the whoops. And later on, we discussed it. And I said, you know what it reminded me of? I said, I used to go to a lot of high school football games when my kids were in high school. And it reminded me of where you get together on the sidelines before the beginning of the first quarter, and everybody goes, they all put their hands together and let's do it for the Gipper. And it's like, hey, they all scream together. That's what it, and I said, that's the outset of a hunt. I said, they're all like getting together to like, it's dusk now. Let's all have success in the hunt. And they all whoop together. You hear whoop, 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 all together at once. And Dave and me and Mitch heard it. And we all looked at each other like, did you hear that? And we all heard it. And I was like, what's that all about? So we believe it was not one family unit. We believe there were several families with maybe older juveniles and maybe adults all together getting ready to break and go on the hunt. That was a weird night too. That was strange. And then of course, we had later on that creature crawl in around the hedge apple tree toward us. And me and Dave saw it. We stood up, and Mitch was behind us on the other side of this giant log. We had like these two logs laying together parallel to each other, and he was between the two. He had his bivvy, and he's ex-military, so he had, like the tent, you put your, basically it's a bivvy and you put your sleeping bag inside of it. He was all buttoned up in that, and I think it got down to 18, 19 degrees that night. So me and Dave stayed up all night. We witnessed this crawler come in, and then since then I went back a couple more, 2 or 3 more times with him, and we continued to do more cold camps. We had success every night, some form of interaction. Almost I'd say on every one of those, we had some kind of nighttime sighting, visual sighting. So it was, and so, what can you tell people? I try to share that with people through my channel and stuff I put in my videos on my channel. I try to share that with people, but it's more of a collection of evidence, pretty close to smoking gun evidence. And I just have to leave it up to others to, maybe give them the feet they want to walk on to prove it to themselves. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. It's everybody's own ability to do their own detective work. And I'm just providing information based on my own detective work. I'm not saying, hey, this is somebody else's information. This is purely my own. And I'm trying to sort of try to, I guess, cooperate or collaborate with people that don't want to fight among themselves. I mean, the Bigfoot community, as you probably well know, is very toxic. There's a lot of
Yeah.
armchair skeptics, armchair professionals, and experts who never have been in the forest, other than to maybe picnic there, that will be the first people to jump down your throat, or be the first people to say, "Oh, I believe everything you said, and I accept it," and they don't try to prove it to themselves. Even those people are poor detectives. So when people tell me, "Oh, you're the greatest and you're this or that," or I believe all your information," I go, "Don't believe me. Think for yourself. Go do your detective work." So I don't want people that follow me based on, "Oh, he's really a nice guy and I love his work." That means nothing to me. I want to share the information so I can raise the bar of progress to establishing we are not the only human beings. We are not the only I guess you'd say human-like people, human-like beings that live on this planet, that there are other creatures that are very human-like, or I like to refer to them as another type of uncontacted tribe. And when people say, "Yeah, but we don't have any video,
Ye-
we have no film, we have no audio," we have a lot of video and audio and film that's already been proven, and some of it is now way better than the Patterson film.
Right.
I mean, the Patterson film broke the door wide open, the Patterson-Gimlin film. So, I mean, when people say, "Yeah, but we don't have any, it's all fuzzy, it's not blurry." No, it is not. It's out there. When I look through my FLIR, my thermal, I had my camera focus, objective lens adjusted pretty well. I could see its outline perfectly. This was a round head. I couldn't see a coned head, but you could tell the head was tied directly to its upper chest, between the shoulders, and the size of its shoulders and the length of its one arm, including the arm that was around the tree, would put the arm length at least the knee level or below the knees. Yeah, it was proportionally not human as we think of humans. So I'd say, of course, I've come to the conclusion they're a hybrid, meaning they're human, like us, but there's other DNA mixed in there, and that's another subject, another
Yeah.
show. You can discuss that, uh, but that led me to other people and deep conversations with those people, like Melba Ketchum. I talked to her for years, and then
Mhm.
I haven't talked to her lately, but she concluded too. She came to the very same conclusions I had based on her own experiences. So it raised my awareness that she had pivotal information that I could pursue to sort of help me with my own research, and not to just condemn them as some dumb ape that are just wandering around our forest like an undiscovered mountain gorilla in Africa. You know, I,
Right.
and
No.
that's very dangerous to say among the Bigfoot community, because people think you're right away, you're not sensationalizing it, and that gives them pause. I'm not a sensationalist. My stuff is very dry. I'm sort of a citizen scientist. I try to apply the scientific method, but at the same time, I don't get fooled by the possibility of all the other animals that exist in our wilderness areas as giving us false negatives. They check mark the box, and you don't want to have that box check mark because you're so much a believer as opposed to just a detective who wants to know. So I always tell people, don't believe, think, and find out for yourself.
Exactly. That's one of the things I tell people to do all the time is, well, very similar like what you do. Like the stuff that I gather, I put it out there, make up your own mind about what it is. Oh, hey, here's these tree structures I found, these archways. Oh, here's these footprints and stuff. But like, don't take don't take my word for it. Let's get out in the woods. Go figure it out for yourself if you're able. If you're not able, that's what it is. But
I mean,
if
I
you want to,
appreciate, like you do, the people that are not able, that maybe to old age, or they're crippled, or they're just limited by their ability to, for whatever reason, their physicality doesn't allow them to go on these walks. Sure, I'll take them along for the ride. But then again, they're still left up to their own thought process to determine if the evidence holds muster. And if the evidence holds muster, those are the people I like, because they're willing to have the conversation and maybe look into areas, information in books or whatever, to say, we don't know everything in the ocean, and we pretend to know all the existing species on the surface of the land. But then when you have somebody like last year, Forrest Galante discovered, I believe there were 6 new species he brought up that were discovered in 19 or 2025. Not by him either, by other researchers that weren't taking at face value that scientists from decades or several years ago claimed were extinct. They found
mhm,
6 new species just last year.
right,
And that's the ones they know about. There may be other people that have already uh, have had discoveries, and maybe for whatever reason haven't haven't had it peer reviewed yet, so it's still not accepted by science. But so that's 6 and possibly more. and I think it's going to continue. So they sent some British researchers down to a part of the Congo, and they're there for a month or two, and they declare because they haven't come in contact with that species, now it's extinct. It's it's professionally extinct by science academics. That's very false, and I think it misleads people. And to this day, Bigfoot is still considered fringe by most of your people that do research in the scientific community. It's considered fringe science. It's not accepted. Yeah, there's exceptions to that, like Professor Bindernagel, who passed away, and Jeff Meldrum, who passed away. They're considered exceptions in the scientific community. So it's still not considered a monolith yet. And so I have to consider what that if we all, all these thousands of researchers like myself that are out there by now doing, amateur work, like myself, if we're all to get together and share our information, but people are very afraid to do that because they're afraid their information is going to be stolen. It's going to be manipulated as far as the video or photographs are going to be manipulated, and then they're going to lose their credibility, so they don't want to share. I don't care. I share my information, and I'm not
Same
afraid to
here.
tell people if they use it again. I don't mind if they use it again as long as they don't take it out of context or they try to misportray it or claim it's their own. You know, I mean, I think like yourself, you're doing research on it. You want people to take your information in research seriously. You don't want them to misportray your information out of context to make it appear as though it's their discovery. So but I'm still careful with the people I share it with that I have good credibility, are honest, and are ethical people, and you hope that they'll do the right thing, and they just won't like share your information with people they can't trust that they know. So, but yeah, as you know, once it hits the internet, it's on the internet forever. So that's a risk you take.
Exactly. Like I do. I haven't been out in the field since October, just because I got a baby right now and I got another baby coming in May. So I've been
Congrats.
locked at home. Thank you, thank you. But I've been staying home and then busy work and stuff like that. But I post some of my research, and I don't mind what happens with that and all that kind of stuff. But I do have my like specific pieces that I have no problem sharing whatsoever, but I don't necessarily want it in the public domain at the moment. There will be a comment, probably, honestly, probably by the end of the year I'm going to post all the research that I have, but like right now there's still some stuff I'm trying to compare and get some secondary, third, fourth, etc. How many people opinions on it before, cuz
Hmm.
I'm very open to saying, oh yeah, this could be naturally occurring. This could just be nothing. In the moment, I thought it was something, or hey, it might be the species because I'm from the Midwest and I'm going down south sometimes, or I'm going up farther up north. Like there's creatures and there's weather patterns and fauna and stuff like that I'm not familiar with how this tree typically falls, what happens with this, or how these plants grow this and this, what might look like a structure to me that's comparable to something in the Midwest could just be natural growth down there. So, I want to make sure the stuff's credible and has a higher potential to be something than just putting something out there and saying, all right, this is this. You have to believe this. This is 100% this,
Yeah. Or you're making assumptions, but you're stating them like they're facts. I see a lot of that going
Right.
on, and but
Yeah.
also you have the willingness to say, I made a mistake and
Mhm.
I'll hold myself accountable to it. And now you learned a valuable thing. Mistakes teach you more than claiming you're right all the time and pretending to be perfect. You can educate yourself through your mistakes much better than if you're like when you're in grade school or high school, you're learning what they call the discipline called rote, which is memorizing things you learned out of a book, so then you can repeat them back onto a test. That's not
Mhm.
true intelligence. If you make
No,
a
definitely.
mistake, even as an electrician, uh, whether you shock yourself or you realize that you wired the motor wrong and the motor burned out or phased out on you, single phased, and then you realize what you did. Next time you do a motor, you're like, boy, I'm a level up now because now I know what I'm dealing with. Now you can take that and teach somebody else to say, hey, if you wire it wrong, which is this way, this may happen. And I find more success when I let people make their own mistakes as opposed to trying to get them to avoid their mistakes, as long as it's within the guardrails of safety. And I know they're
Yeah.
not going to blow a finger off or whatever. But making
Exactly.
mistakes, yeah, I had one when I first started doing research with a friend of mine. Uh, we went into a cave together, and the cave split into a secondary cave that, like, it was an outcropping cave that came off the initial cave. You like you see a tunnel, and the bedrock at the base of the first cave goes up a couple feet, and you climb up on the bedrock and you see an opening and you crawl through that opening. I went up and I was crawling. I was not crawling. I actually crawled up on the ledge and I stood up and I was going through this opening into the secondary cave. And the light in the secondary cave, it had two openings at the top of that secondary cave that went to the outside. So the light was bleeding through from ambient sunlight. And when I crawled in there and I was walking through the connector uh, part of that tunnel going into the cave, I cast a shadow on the wall behind me. And the guy I went in with, he was like 25 feet behind me. He took his cell phone camera and he just was snapping pictures. And he snapped a picture and didn't realize he caught this shadow. A couple nights later, he's going through all these photos and he texts me and he goes, "Hey, I got this picture of a shadow." Yeah, he says, of something in that like connecting hallway or tunnel up to the next cave. And I looked at it and initially I thought, boy, that's unusual. You could see the big shoulders, uh, smaller head, but it looked like it was potentially a creature, some kind of creature. And I posted it without really scrubbing through it or thinking through what I was doing. This was years ago. And And then I remember I posted it as a thumbnail or something on one of my videos. I might have had also uh, put it in the video as like for a couple seconds to say, "Hey, look at this. I don't know what this is." Later on, I thought it through and I thought, "Wait a second. His position was behind me. I was 25 feet ahead of him to the connector cave section of the cave, the secondary cave, and where you connect, you got to walk through this opening about, and the bedrock goes up about 2 feet." And with the light in that secondary cave shining toward you, it would cast a shadow on the wall behind you. And I thought about that. That picture is a picture of my shadow on the wall, is finally the conclusion I came through. And I was like I was doing somersaults in my mind, trying to figure out, was there something in the cave with me and my friend? And we were doing Bigfoot research. He was convinced when he scrubbed through it, oh, there was a Bigfoot in there and we just didn't see him. And he was, that's sort of the shadow of the Bigfoot. And then I realized that was my own shadow. He captured a picture of my own shadow. He concluded, to me, that's sort of lazy research, I believe, on his part. But on my part, it was a major mistake I made, assuming that I believed him without really looking into it and doing my own investigation. My own investigation made me realize, oh, this was just a shadow effect I created, and he took a picture of it and didn't know it until he examined the picture later on when he was going through his photo album on his cell phone. He enlarged it and he sent it to me. And I told him when I went in there, I says, don't be afraid to take your cell phone out and just start snapping pictures of the inside of this cave. And it was a limestone cave. We have plenty of those in Illinois. So later on, I thought, yeah, that's a great learning tool for me because you know, I thought there was something there and there was nothing there. So,
I've
and I
had
look at
something
Bigfoot
very
research
similar happen.
on the broad sense, you know, creatures you hear, you think are Bigfoot vocalizations, and then you find out. In one instance, I found out foxes make like 39 different vocalizations. Just a plain old fox, red fox. And the guy who took that audio, I told him, I said, hey, I matched it up. I says it matches your vocalization. I said, we can't match your vocalization. anything that's unknown. I said I match it to a known vocalization. It's it's called a vixen in heat. It's a call a female fox makes. So I'm getting yeah. So he didn't believe it. He wanted to believe the more sensationalist thing, which was it sounded like he was on the top of a hill that was sort of a bald hill, but was surrounded by trees and brush. And him and his friends sat up there and they recorded this vixen in heat on the tree line walking around them. And he was convinced it was a Bigfoot. And I matched it up to known fox folk.
Oh, I was gonna say, yeah, those animal. It's crazy how many different vocalizations, like you said, just like the fox has 39. How many different ones? So like, yeah, I'm sitting on some audio, a couple different pieces of audio right now, and they don't sound like anything I've ever heard. But I'm waiting to find a person that I can send them to, similar to like your buddy that you send that stuff to, that can analyze that kind of stuff and make sure it's like, all right. Because I've showed the audio to some people and they're like, oh, that sounds like an alpha coyote doing this. And I'm like, yeah, but there's like 4 or 5 different things screaming back at each other. And, it being in the Midwest, we got coyotes everywhere. At least I think I've heard every noise that they make, but I could
Yeah.
be wrong.
Coyotes make a lot of different vocalizations too. Uh, I use the Macaulay Library of Sounds from Cornell University. They have thousands and thousands of from whales to birds to mammals. And if you can't put your vocalization or your sound in and they'll do a match. What you do is you do it through what you suspect it is. So if you hear a vocalization that you've recorded or somebody else recorded and you suspect it's a coyote or fox, you go to the Macaulay Library of Natural Sounds and you search fox calls and it'll give you every fox call they recorded in the US and even foxes of different species in other countries. And that's how you find it. I did what I call a Google search. And in the Google search, I just put in uh, types of fox calls and I came up with, I don't know, 20 or 30 different YouTube biologists that have YouTube accounts that were putting up different types of fox vocalizations. And I found it that way. I thought it actually came up vixen and heat call, which is one of those 39 calls. And the guy who recorded, he was convinced it was Bigfoot. He works out of, I think, Connecticut. And I told him, here it is. I says, I got the same call you got. And I sent it to him and and he goes, you got that? What, you got one too? And I go, yeah. I said, that's a vixen in heat call from a fox. And I never heard back from him. He didn't want to, people don't want to accept that they may be wrong or made a mistake. It's not, I don't know how many times I said it to people, including myself. It's not about being right. It's about where the facts take you, even though you may not like those facts. That's just how the truth operates. You know, people don't want to hear the truth nowadays. I'm sure you know that by now, Riley.
Yeah, all too well. But it's unfortunate because it's gonna take a lot. It's gonna make proving these things are to the masses, proving these things are real when people don't want to help pull out the bad weeds. As far as
Yeah.
like you said. And when I say bad weeds, I don't mean intentionally bad, like the person's faking it, but like we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, mistakes
Well,
happen. you
yeah.
know, we
Mistakes
don't know
happen. And don't
everything.
forget, people don't want to say, I don't know anymore. I say the majority, by far, the vast majority of people, they'd rather have the sensationalist answer that sounds more impressive and all consuming than having, well, that was just a fox. Or it's a vocalization of a Bigfoot because it matches nothing in the library of sounds from the Macaulay Library. Well, that's just a 2-second sound. To them, that's not sensational enough hearing a whoop. I think it's a big deal to me, but, you know, and wood knocks, as wild as it may sound, that's incredible, but that's still inconclusive. At least with a vocalization uh, footprint, you can figure out where on the scale of megahertz it sounds. Usually with Bigfoot vocalizations, it's between the 6 and 7 thousand megahertz sound is where it falls, whereas coyotes and dogs are down there at 3 or 4 thousand. So there is a big difference. So you can sort of figure it out that way using a spectrograph or Audacity, whatever software you choose to use. But I and there's a physical evidence, whether it be uh, the impressions of footprints or the hair analysis, DNA uh, sequenced, to even the structures they build where you find some of these uh, other samples or evidence like the hair. And uh, my friend recently, he sent me one of the impressions from Tennessee of handprints on his on the outside of his van. Pretty convincing, because now you have the digital fingerprint of not a man that's 8 feet tall, but of the hairy people is what I call him, hairy man, and he's got him on his property. So he's always sending me eye shine and vocalizations. He did the other day. He had eye shine to the left of him and to the right of him as he exited his van. He says they're on both sides of my property, looking toward my van, which was parked next to his cabin. And he's a very good, logical, no nonsense researcher. He doesn't jump to conclusions or speculate out loud to people who then assume he's telling them the facts. Speculation, a lot of people can't make. Like they might be watching this video later on and hear the tail end of what you and I said, which was a speculation, and assumed it was a fact. And that's a problem. People are poor listeners too. So it just,
Hmm.
you know, to me, that's is unfortunate, because you always got to look at the context of what the person is saying it in. You know, I might say, well, you may ask me, what do you think Bigfoot is? And I give you what I assume or speculate they might be. But people might catch along the end of that and say, oh, that guy on Riley's podcast says Bigfoot is this as a fact, when I never said that. I just say, I
Right.
think this is what they could be, or might be, but I'm not, I'm just, that's just a thought, thinking out loud. It means nothing when it comes down to what really is going on. And when people ask
Hmm.
me, what are the meaning of the structures? I have a lot of ideas of what they could be, but I don't know what they really are and what purpose they
It's
serve,
exactly.
and so but they want those answers. And I'm like, well, go be a detective. Go to your local park, find the structures, and make up your own speculation. It's nothing wrong with that.
It's fun too. It gets you away at the end of the day. Even if you don't find anything, you're getting out in nature and you're getting away from all the buzz and everything else going on in the world for a few hours.
Yeah. And that's
It's
what I
good.
used to say
It
about fishing. I said, go fishing, catch nothing. And people say, yeah, but you wasted your time. I said, no. I said, I could meditate. I could think about things I need to improve in my life. I said, I get to experience the fresh air. It's a win-win, even if you don't catch fish. It's still a win-win. And that's why I look at Bigfooting. I make days I am skunked. No vocalizations, no structure, no footprints, no evidence of activity anywhere. But it's a healthy thing to do. You go out in nature, you breathe in all those terpenes from the various trees that are healing for your body, and you do things that are it cleanses your psyche, it cleanses your mind and your body. So it's a win-win too. You know, People don't ask me about that ever. How many times do you go out and only find I might go out sometimes 9 or 10 times to the same spot and only be successful in recovering some form of evidence only once. But that doesn't bother me. And it's not going to be 100% of the time either. You think you're always going to get, I go to my hotspot, and even there, I'll find the old evidence, but I won't find anything new for maybe the next 5 or 6 outings. And then I'll go like I did 2 weeks ago and have all sorts of whooping around me from 3 different positions from below me at the creek bed. And then realize, hey, I have to leave. I have to get out of here because they're they're whooping to each other to let each other know, hey, we got that guy's back here again, meaning me. And then I got to sort of gracefully back out of there because I don't want to push them out. And I definitely don't want them to get pissed off at me either. I want to be able to, I'm still
It's
trying to make contact in a way that's going to, hopefully I can survive some form of contact with them. I've had that once, and that happened in Wisconsin. I had a form of contact, and I was very lucky. I didn't freak out. I calmed myself, and in my mind, I'm thinking, I can't believe this happened, and that's a story I've never told to too many individuals other than the people that were there with me, which was yeah, that was interesting too. I actually went in there, and in my mind, I kept repeating myself, sort of in my mind's eye. Uh, we There's four of us up there, me and four other guys, and we went to Tomahawk, Wisconsin. And when I first arrived, I decided to have sort of a modus operandi of how I was going to apply my research. And one of them is uh, our Bigfoot. Do they have the ability to sense or read our minds? Is telepathy? I know telepathy does exist among humans to a very small degree. Probably very few people on the planet have the ability to have telepathy where they can read another person's mind. Is They've been talking about this for decades about Bigfoot having mind speak. So I
Mhm.
wanted to test this theory just with myself. And I told nobody else about it. The other four guys didn't know about it. And we went to an area behind this woman's house where she had had a lot of visitations from dogmen, and uh, she never mentioned Bigfoot, but we were going down there to research dogman and Bigfoot if there were a Bigfoot there. And I think on the second or third night I was there, during the whole time I was there, by the third night, I got activity. And what I was doing is in my mind, it was sort of a thought experiment. I said to myself, I want to have a physical encounter or touch from Bigfoot, whether it's a handshake. I want to experience some form of physical contact that I could survive. And I kept repeating this in my mind as a thought experiment. And on the second or third night, we all went to our respective tents in this property in Tomahawk, Wisconsin, surrounded by forest. It was this house that was isolated, and the house was in foreclosure. And the women who still owned the house allowed us to camp in her backyard. At about, I'd say 2:30. Yeah, it was probably 2:30 to 2 a.m. in the morning, somewhere in that vicinity. I'm laying in my little one man tent, mountain tent, and I got the urge to urinate. And it was overcast, dark as hell outside the tent. And I had a tent with basically my rain shelter had a door. My rain uh, my rain shelter had the door, and then of course I had my tent door. So I had to unzip two parts of my tent to get out. And I thought, so I made up. I always brought like a mason jar with me, or a bottle, wide, big mouth bottles of Gatorade, empty bottles. And so I would just, if I had to go during the night, I would just wake up, turn the tent light on, uh, and urinate in the bottle. And that's exactly what happened about 2:30 at night. Go ahead. What was were you going to ask me?
Oh no, I was just I was just agreeing with the taking bottles out in the tents when you're out going.
Yeah. I was even, and I thought, well, I didn't really want to go out. It was overcast. Had it been pretty bright outside, with moon, I might have gone out. But uh, as I got older, I thought, yeah, I'll just use a bottle, urinate in the bottle. So what I
Mhm.
did is I got that pressure. I woke up and realized I had pressure on my kidneys. I had to urinate. So I turned the tent light on. I, uh, I basically, all I had to do is kneel. So I got out of my sleeping bag, and in kneeling position with the light on, I did my duty in this little Gatorade bottle, put the cap on it, turned the light off, and then laid down on my right shoulder and just, tried to go back to sleep. I'd say within 10 or 20 seconds at that of laying on my right shoulder, thinking I want to go back to sleep, I hear footsteps. Like I thought it was one of the other 4 guys in their tents walking toward the back of my tent in this total darkness with no flashlight on. There's no way you could have walked in this total darkness without a flashlight on. You would fall, you would have hit something, you would have tripped, you would have, nobody could have done it. So I hear these footfalls coming toward the back of my tent. And behind my tent, I had all these paper grocery bags, the brown paper grocery bags, which I had like my coffee and sugar and cream. And I might have had a loaf of bread in it. And I had a second bag with some other snacks in it. And I'm thinking, oh, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, that's just a bear. It's going to rob my sugar. It's going to get into my bread and I could kiss that goodbye. No, this thing I could hear probably 8 to 10 steps, just boom, 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 come right up to the back of my tent, reach over the bags. In the back, I was on my right shoulder, so my back was almost touching the back wall of my tent. Now, it's a one-man mountain tent. It has basically the footprint for one 6'2" person to lay in. I'm 5'10". So if I lay on my back, my right shoulder's touching the front end of my tent and my left shoulder's touching the back of the tent. That's how wide they make it. It's just a one person tent. I'm laying on my side. My back is probably within inches of the back wall. This thing, it stops right at the edge of where I had my bags next to the tent. The next thing I know, I didn't see it. I feel a hand between my shoulder blades pushing on me. Now, if I would have turned and looked over to my left with the light on, I would have seen the mesh of my tent pushing in. So pushed on my back, rolled me onto my stomach. So I'm laying there on my stomach with my jaw almost hitting the ground. My jaw dropped open and I'm thinking, first thing I thought, can I get out of the tent fast enough to see what it is? Well, I had to unzip, the regular tent, and then I had to unzip the rainfly door to get out. I thought that's not going to work. And then I'm thinking, do I yell out? Because my friend Ricky's like 10 feet in front of me in his tent, 10 to 12 feet in front of me where my door is. Well, how's he going to react? And the other guys, which have tents 20 to 30 feet away, 2 other tents, am I going to upset them? So everybody's going to make all this noise. And this thing's going to skedaddle the minute that happens. So I couldn't yell. I couldn't exit the tent. So I'm just saying, I'll just tell them what happened when we wake up and see what everybody says. And then I thought, wait a second. That thing must have felt my intentions or read my thoughts, because that whole first couple days I was there, I had that. It was like a meditation. Every now and then I would think of it and I'd say, yes, I want to make contact with you. I'm a friend. I just want contact, some form of physical contact. Well, that was they gave it to me. They rolled me over onto my stomach.
Yeah.
I waited a few hours later. I was up at like 6 or 4, whatever, 3.5, 4 hours later. I'm getting up. We're all sitting around having coffee at about 8 o'clock. An hour or two later, we're sitting around. We had our coffee made. We're sitting around drinking coffee. And I asked everybody there with me, I said, you guys, anybody have any experiences last night? And one of the guys he had a blind, one of those tents that you use for blind for deer hunting. But the fabric was like canvas or duckback. It was like a fabric, and it was round, and it's like for deer hunting, it was a camouflage tent. And he goes, yeah, he says, on one side of the tent, he says, I was half asleep. And he says, on one side of my tent, I heard what sounded like fingernails dragging across the outside of the fabric. He said, it was so obvious. And I go, I says, that's strange. He goes, it's more strange. He had a pet fox, a domesticated fox. He says, my fox was in a cage on the other side of it was like one of those doggy little transport cages or whatever. But he says he had his fox in there, and he thought his fox got out. And then he realized, wait a second, my fox is in the cage on the other side of my tent. This was on the total opposite side of his tent. So he says, I was afraid to unzip the door of my tent, check it out. Cause he says, and I go, where was the scratching coming from? Where it was, he says it was like at about, he says it was, the tent's about 6 feet tall. He says it was toward the top of the tent above the window. He said it was dragging his fingernails. So everybody's looking at him like, what the hell's going on with that? And then I said, well, I just wanted to know because this happened to me at about 2:30 a.m. And so then we came to the conclusion there was one juvenile just walking around the backyard between all our tents, or there might have been multiple juveniles, maybe 2 or 3 of them just going from tent to tent. They also assumed my tent was picked because it was the smallest tent. It was a tiny little single man mountain tent. Everybody else had 3-person, 4-person tents. And they were like, they left them alone except for Dave and me. Dave had his fox on the other side of his tent. I was in that little, what looks like a children's tent. They probably, but and then I thought, well, wait a second. I sort of asked for this. I asked them, I gave him permission to, hey, you can have contact with me. And in my mind's eye, I was like, my mind's eye was picturing like me reaching out and our hands touching. That was the type of contact I wanted to have. That I sort of I call it psychocybernetics, where you sort of visualize like what you're going to do. Uh, you know, like if you're into boxing, you visualize the moves you're going to make, or in martial arts or whatever. But I visualize this Bigfoot standing there, and he approaches me, and then I'm standing there, and as he approaches me, I extend my hand and we touch each other. Well, he did something similar to that. He touched me, and I was laying there. So I walked, later on, I thought about that. I'm thinking, what's next? What next can be the next moment? Uh, but he had the upper hand. I was concealed in the tent, couldn't see what was going on. I could only assume. And later on, I talked to guys after I told them my story. Ran into you guys walking around at this in the middle of the night, trying to scare me. And they didn't know about my thought experiment. They had no clue I was asking for this. And they all said, no, we were in our tent. It was dark outside, short of using a flashlight to navigate. They all stayed in their tents. So, yeah, that's a situation that sort of changed my methodology toward my research, because I have that always in the back of my mind. Do they have a sense of what you're thinking or what your thought process is? Do they potentially read your mind? So I left that on the table. I can't prove it. This did happen to me, and I assume it was the hairy man. But the other 4 guys said, no, we weren't walking around. One guy was out of the military, and the other 2 guys were serious researchers besides myself. And then the 4th guy, he, the 4th guy, he finally left. He had to go back to Colorado, so he left a day early. But we all had vocalizations. We all had our experiences during that week we were in Wisconsin. And one guy went out on the trail and claims he was being walked out by 2 individuals, one on his left and one on his left and one on his right of the trail he was on. And he says when he felt their presence or heard them paralleling him, he turned around to leave and walk back, and they accompanied him back, and it scared him. It scared him. And I told him, I says, I've had the paralleling thing going on, but it was usually only on one side of me, and deep enough into the wood line where you couldn't see him, but you could hear him quite obviously. And he experienced that. Only he said they were on both sides of him. So I told him, I said, you were in the thick of it. You were very lucky, So, and we had rock throwing that week too. There was a trailer that had been abandoned next to about 50, 60 feet on one side of that woman's property. There was an abandoned trailer. And we heard one night, well, actually on 2 different nights, sounded like somebody throwing rocks at the trailer. You know, when you hear rocks hitting, you know, the side of aluminum sheeting or whatever on trailers, it's pretty obvious. It sounds like a rock hitting a stop sign. It was just,
Yeah,
and the guys, we didn't know what to make of
the,
that. Like maybe
the
they just,
ding.
yeah, and we heard
Yeah,
it and we just sort of like commented to each other about it, like that, yeah, it's happening. What can we do about that? What are they trying to say? Hey, yeah, we're here and we're just, I think they like to screw around with you. They like to trick you and mess with you. I know that goes on too to some degree. I think they have a sense of humor,
yeah,
uh, but they don't like you to muck with them. I know that. Uh, Meaning like trying to track them down, trying to go to where you think they are, and trying to like get video of them and sort of tracking them in that fashion where they know they're being tracked and you continue to track them. I don't think they don't consider that funny, and I think they do draw a line in the sand. And I've had that happen twice to me, where I accidentally created a. I think the first time it was a bluff charge by accident in the incident with the mushrooms. I walked up on this thing and it crashed through the brush and ended up under this tree, partly uh, concealed by the tree. That's the story I told you about my dog turning around and coming back to me. Uh, what I omitted is when this thing, I heard it crash through the trees and stop, me assuming it was a big deer or buck. And then my dog saw it and it turned around and come back to me. And it turned out to be this figure of this big, what I thought at the time, because I didn't know what was going on, a big homeless guy wearing all black in, I think it was 65-degree weather that day. And I'm thinking, what is this guy dressed in
yeah.
a all black? Is he wearing, he's wearing like uh, I thought he was wearing a big black, uh, Carhartt, like farmers wear. And I'm thinking, well, that didn't make sense. And then, of course, the second time I was bluff charged, I, uh, I, I knew I could track them, and I decided to try tracking some individuals, and it ended at the end of that pursuit, me tracking them through tree breaks, leaners, and other types of what I call wood sign. I tracked it to basically a grove of trees next to a river, and it charged out at me. Yeah, it stopped right at the tree line and let it was like a bulldozer coming toward me, and stopped right at the edge of the tree line, beyond this grassy area between this hill I was standing on and this like grassy area of weeds before you get to the tree line. And that was probably 60, 70 yards from my vantage point where it stopped, but yet I could not see it. It was still in the tree line. It scared me. I was like, it was basically saying this is as far as I go. On the other side of that grove of trees was a river. I don't think it wanted to cross the river, and it had enough of me, and I pushed it. So I turned around, and it's funny because right before I did that, I had just changed the battery in my camera, but hadn't turned it on yet. So I would have caught the audio at least of that bluff charge. Uh, and so the other time was a mistake. It was an accidental thing. I think I walked up on it, surprised it, and a bluff charge toward me to say don't come any further. But this time it was me being intentional. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna track this thing. So I followed all the tree sign, all the wood sign, and got to pretty close to the river. And this thing was like, okay, that's it. I was following tree bends. Uh, they like to take. There was a downed pine tree, all the branches broken off, and it was sitting at the ridge top or the ridge of the hill, pointing directly toward the river, as if to say, "This is the direction toward water." And I followed it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking, what would a Bigfoot set up as directional markers for members of its clan or family to follow to water places of concealment, forage, and food, etc. And I followed those markers, and I was rewarded with don't come any further. So when people say they can't be tracked, you can track them. Uh,
Yes, you
you can
can.
track them. It's not, people always say, oh, Bigfoot are, you know, they're the best trackers in the world. But even they leave sign, you know, they still leave sign. And so I never accepted that. People that are lazy researchers always say they can't be tracked. All you got to do is camp out, get your food, grill out, make some barbecue or make some steaks, and they'll come to you. Yeah, but to me, you're not going to find the evidence like you can if you're actually out there looking for evidence off trail. That's quite a big difference, I think. So that's personally what I do.
Same here. Same here. But I know it's getting late, and I know we could probably sit here and talk for another 3 hours.
Yeah, man, I
Um,
can't believe
I would love.
the clock got away from us, huh? Yeah,
Oh, if I didn't have to work in a few hours,
oh man, you got to work in a few hours, huh?
yeah, well, it's all good. I get a few
I mean,
hours
I
of
sort
sleep,
of
and I'll
jumped
be good
around
to
with the
go.
stories. I apologize. I was like all over the
Oh,
map.
it was perfect.
I mean, you
Oh,
edit
it
it
was
the
all
way,
good.
yeah, you edit it the way, you feel it will work for you. And
I'm leaving it as is.
cool.
So with this all being said, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'll have me and you talked about it beforehand. Everybody listening, all his stuff's gonna be down in the bio down below. And guys, thank you for listening. Uh, yeah, this was a blast. If you or anybody else would like to be a guest on the show, if you're a researcher, if you've had encounters, or you just got some cool stories from where you live that you would like to come on the show and tell, you can you can find me on Instagram. That's down below, or you can go to my link tree, much like Mr. Don here did. Hit the report encounter form, and it goes straight to my email, and from there I'll be able to contact you through my email. And with that being said, y'all, have a blessed week, and I'll catch you next Tuesday. Bye.